are live. Let's see. There are a couple of people here, as is usually the case. If you're watching this live, please tell me that the sound is coming through okay. I am, as is relatively common these days, in a hotel room. This time around, I am in Dallas. I'm bailing out here tomorrow morning, but I have time tonight, and I figured I should spend a few minutes talking about pistol optics. But as is usually the case, I'll take whatever questions you guys may have. Right? Let's see if there are a couple of people. If you're watching this live, please put something in the chat box. Tell me that the sound is coming through. Okay. Let's see. Excellent. Mr. Jared is here. Cody is here, so the guys on YouTube can hear me. I'm gonna go ahead and assume that the guys on locals and Rob can hear me as well. I published a video on, forgive me, I'm messing with my eye, my contacts are bothering me, it's been a long day. I published a video a couple days ago, well, yeah, I think I released it yesterday, on the Vortex Defender XL red dot site, the site that I really liked a fair bit. And while I was spending time with the Defender XL, I also spent quite a lot of time with other handguns I have with mounted red dot sights, and it just so happened that I had a chance to look through and use quite a bit a good variety of them. It was different sized guns, from compacts like Glock 43 up to Glock 48 size, Glock 19 size, Glock 17 size, Glock 34 size, CC75 compact, long slide, Glock type builds with 6-inch barrels. And the red dot sights themselves had a very broadly differing window sizes, with the Vortex Defender XL being the largest, and I think it's 28 millimeters wide, something like that. I'm gonna pull up. I'm gonna pull up the size so that I remember exactly. But the smallest was the Leupold Delta Point Micro, which is a tiny red dot sight with a 9mm round window. Hold on, let me find the size of the different XL. Why is this not working? Is the video choppy at all? Like I said, I'm trying to figure out if the quality in this, the internet quality in this hotel is good enough. I've done a live stream from here in the past without any real issues, but right now on my end, something is a little bit off. There you go. So the Vortex with the Defender XL is 25.5 millimeters wide, so basically an inch, and 23.3 millimeters high, which is a good bit higher than normal. Jared, I still haven't gotten a pistol optic, but mostly because I need slides with mounts. So going forward with handguns, I have a few without red dot sights, but anything that I'm going to shoot in any volume is going to have a red dot sight. The advantages are too significant. The advantages are not so much for accuracy, but for speed, and most importantly for low light performance. The moment the light gets iffy, red dot sights have all sorts of advantages, and it's not close, especially as you get a little bit older. Night sights don't get you close, none of that. I've written and talked quite a bit about pistol-mounted optics in the past, and my overall opinion on how to set them up has not changed very much. I prefer relatively low-mounted red dot sights, especially if we're talking about carry, and I want iron sights co-witnessed through them for redundancy and also for presentation practice. Now, nothing in this world is free. If you have 100,000 repetitions with the iron sighted handgun, you will have to do a little bit of training to transition to red dot sights. There's no easy way around it. But this retraining, it's not really retraining. It's like subtle shifts in how you present. And switching to a pistol with a red dot sight is not nearly as huge of a problem as people tend to make it out. Right? It's it takes a little bit of practice, but we should be practicing anyway. One of the reasons I tend to prefer red dot sights with relatively low deck height, all else being equal, is that it minimizes the amount of retraining you have to do on your presentation. Right? You basically, if you can co-witness it with standard height sights, roughly, then it doesn't take that much work to change your presentation. The bigger change in many ways is in how you aim. One of the very underappreciated advantages of the red dot sights with irons, if you want to shoot relatively well, you really need to have a very strong focus on your front sight. That means your target is somewhat blurry. That works fine when you're shooting paper and steel even. But if you are trying to figure out if whatever you're looking at needs to be shot or not, with the red dot sight, you are basically just looking at your target, and the dot is just there. That is a better presentation of a real life stressful situation where you should be and will be primarily looking at whatever's in front of you and trying to figure out if it needs to be shot or not. And with red dot sights, you do not have to worry about shifting your focus to front sight. That makes ultimately quite a bit of difference. What was I? Yeah. So red dot sights. So I looked at the broad range of them, with the smallest being Delta Point Micro, 9mm, very tiny window, and the largest being Vortex Defender XL. Some were enclosed, some were open. The intermediate sizes were the relatively standard ones like Shield RMS, and then the narrow one, the size of Shield RMS C. With enclosed ones, I've been looking at the Swamp Fox Kraken and Gideon Optics. What was it? Advocate? Is it? No, Advocate is a prismatic. They have this creative naming convention that I can never quite remember for sure. So they now have Gen 2. I've been looking at Gen 1, but I'll tell you exactly which Gideon it is. I've talked about in the past when I had a mic from Gideon Optics here. Where is it? That's close to Mitra. Mediator. There we go. Gideon Optics Mediator. That and the Kraken are roughly the same size, roughly the size of the Aimpoint Acro, ballpark, or Steiner PS, if that's more familiar for you. Their window size is more like RMS-C, slightly narrow. And I walked away with some conclusions that are not necessarily super surprising. It's more like information what I thought it would be. But looking at window size, a lot kind of depends on what gun you mount it on. The speed of deploying the first shot did not, for me at least, and training on a square range, did not seem to be particularly different between the red dot sights of different sizes. Where I saw some difference was with the follow-up shot. And there also, it is not as if you can just unequivocally say that, with a larger window it was better or something like that. Okay, I just noticed on Local's website, Mr. R. Kraus put in a comment under the post. Unless you put in the chat box, I do not see it while I'm talking. Right, I just happened to be glancing. So if you're trying to ask a question, put it in the chat box. What was that? Yeah. If the gun is relatively heavy, or at least not super light, with a larger window red dot size, you have a little bit of a muzzle rise, but you never lose sight of a dot if you have a large window size, and that does make a difference. For example, in a gun the size of a Glock 17, which is more or less what I had, I had the Defender XL and the Glock 17 and Glock 19. On both of those, I can, with normal 9mm ammo, and with most normal ammo, what happens is that I can control the muzzle rise well enough where I never lose sight of the dot. And that resulted in a consistently faster follow-up shot. However, on a smaller gun, when I was experimenting with it, no matter what I do, if it's the same 9mm ammo in a gun, the size of Glock 43, let's say, no matter what I do, there is enough movement of the handgun under recoil where I lose the dot during the recoil cycle. And if that happens, then the window size does not hugely matter for me, because the time it takes me to reacquire the target through the sight is more or less the same, regardless of which red dot I'm working with. But if you are working with a full-size or closed gun, it looks like there is a distinct speed advantage to the larger window size. Again, it's not super unexpected. I hadn't given it a huge amount of thought in the past. I've never been a big fan of red dot sights with a large window. A while back, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he talked about maintaining the dot and versus losing it, and I was basically telling him, well, how does it work? He was losing it, and as we discussed, it turns out that he was talking about a relatively heavy red dot handgun. Well, in my mind, most of my red dot sight shooting has been with relatively small carry type sights like Glock 43, Glock 48. That size, and with those, the gun is small enough, it's slim enough. I just was not maintaining the size of the dot. So if you are thinking of does the window size make a difference for speed? Yes, if your gun is large enough, heavy enough, or the combination of gun and cartridge is adequate for you to keep a reasonable control of the muzzle. Let's do a couple of questions. Mr. The One and Only Sherlock, it's a very creative name. I really want to play with a Delta Point Micro. I've had an idea of trying to design a mount for one that would act as a rear sight on the rifle. Seems like a fun idea. It would. Okay, there's the flip. In my head, it works like this. When the dot is off, use it like normal irons. When the dot is on, it's, well, a red dot. So that is exactly how it works. And I don't know if Delta Point Micro is still made on it. I think it is. And I hope Leupold continues making it. They've been really thinking out of the box, which I do appreciate. The way the Delta Point Micro works, and if for those who haven't seen it, it's basically a 9mm in a diameter tube that replaces the rear sight. And when the dot is off, it works like a ghost ring rear sight. And if you're a rifleman used to ghost ring aperture rear sights, then the Leupold Delta Point Micro will work beautifully. When it's off, it's just the rear sight. It works very, very nicely. And when you turn on the dot, you need to change nothing. In terms of retraining, the Leupold Delta Point Micro required nothing from me. When the dot is off, I just look through it. It's a rear sight. I see the front sight. There's a sharp focus on the front sight, we're fine. And the way I sighted it in, the dot sits right on top of the front sight. and works beautifully. So, but the speed of the follow-up shot is not as fast as with a larger window. If you are talking about deliberate shots, I thought it was great, right? And honestly, there is given how small it is and how easy it is to install with a site like Delta Point Micro, you may not be gaining as much speed as you could with a large window red dot, but you're absolutely gaining a significant amount of low light performance with or without a dot on, even with a dot off, because you don't have this rear notch that blocks stuff. You just have a aperture and you see the front sight through it, right? Uh, Even without a dot on, in fading light, not in pitch black, in fading light, you have quite a bit better low light performance because you're just seeing the front sight post. And with the dot on, it's wonderful in low light. My only real complaint with the Delta Point Micro in many ways is that the dot is quite small. It's 3 MOA. I prefer larger dot sizes. We can talk about that a little bit. And the way they did this, there's this push button in the back, and you only have manual adjustments. With a site like that, I would really prefer to have automated dot brightness that adjusts to the ambient light. It's relatively easy to make work in a site like that. The exposure of the camera keeps on changing. I'm trying to figure out if I move a little bit. Yikes. Auto exposure makes me look like a mutant. On a rifle, if you were to find a way to set up a Delta Point micro, basically you'd need to just fashion a Glock style dovetail, and it'll fit that just fine. It should work quite nicely if you can physically set it up properly with a dot. The basic problem is that the button that controls the illumination is facing downward. So on a rifle, you may have some issues in trying to get it properly set up, but maybe worth a shot. Mr. Beardo, do comps help? I mean, I assume you mean compensators. Yes, compensator definitely helps with the speed of the follow-up shot because it controls the muzzle rise. But comps also make the gun loud, so none of my small carry guns have compensators. And for the cleanliness of the experiment, none of the guns that I used for this had compensators. Generally, yes, it does help. The one minor problem with the compensated guns is that because they blast the gases up and slightly to the side, at least most of them. If you fire one in low light, there goes your night vision. So, Mr. R. Kraus just picked up a Defender XL and a 509T. Looking forward to trying it out. Only other pistol optic I've owned was an RMR. It was fine, but having to re-zero after replacing the batteries was frustrating. Yeah, I can definitely see that. As far as the battery compartment goes, I think the Vortex Defender XL is the best setup I've seen yet. Extremely easy to use and much better than none other Defenders. So the other Defender red dot sights are not nearly as user-friendly in terms of battery replacement as the Defender XL. Jared, is there much variation in reticle design? So for pistol-mounted optics, I have experimented with quite a few. Fundamentally, we have kind of three varieties. We have small dot, we have large dot, and then we have circle dot designs. The fourth one is a little bit out of the left field, is what Primary Arms uses. It's their Vulcan type reticle, where there's a center aiming point. Originally, it was a chevron, which worked okay, but I'm not a huge fan of ultimately. And my eyes are getting a little bit too old with the mild astigmatism. The chevron, it's not ideal. And hey, Drew, Mr. Drew Morgan is here. Howdy. And if you saw Primary Arms release their Discover 2025, meaning the optics they are releasing in 2025, there are several really, really interesting ones there. And at the very front of it is there, I think it's called HTX1. There you go. It's their enclosed red dot sight that is fully US made. I have not seen the production version of it. I have seen several prototypes over the last couple of years. I expect it to be very good. And the way they did the reticle on that, it's a 3 MOA dot surrounded by a very large circle. When you're straight looking through the sight straight on, you don't see the circle. But if you're accidentally misaligned something, you see the edges of the circle, and it allows you to get back on center. I'm gonna see hopefully fully production version at SHOT Show. I plan to get my hands on it and do quite a bit of testing. It is supposed to be 100% US components, which is not such a straightforward thing. So I'm going to plan with that, play with that. All right, you see, has anyone done a documented test showing the difference between accuracy and shot times of a shooter using iron sights versus a red dot on the same gun? Multiple shooters of various skill levels performing this test would be very helpful. Yes, I'm pretty new to the subject. I don't know if anybody has done a fully documented test, but the whole red dot sight business started with the competition shooters, and Doug Koenig and all these guys. And when they started using red dot sights on optics, their scores and times improved dramatically. For any sort of a low light competition, low light is where you see the most difference. For super skilled shooters in bright light, I don't know if there's a ton of difference. For me personally, I'm not the most skilled shooter in the world within reasonable ranges. In terms of accuracy and group size, I don't shoot any better with a red dot than I do with good quality irons. But the moment the light levels drop, it makes all the difference in the world. With some red dot sights, they can't wash out what flashlight use against the white wall. It's one of the reasons you want to co-witness with irons. But in compromised light, I don't know if anybody has done a formal test, but I've done enough shooting with it. There is not a trace of a doubt in my mind that pistol-mounted optics is a vastly superior solution, and it's not close. What was that? Yeah, going back to the reticle design. So primary arms has their idea with a very large circle that basically allows you to get back on target. And beyond that, having looked at quite a lot of different ones, I have a very strong preference toward larger dot sizes on handguns. Again, they play a little bit better with astigmatism, and I am clearly faster with those. But opinions differ. If you're young and you have particularly healthy eyes, then a relatively small, 3 MOA dot is going to work fine for you. I do not know anyone who has tried to shoot the same red dot sight with, let's say, 3 MOA dot and 6 MOA dot, and who was faster or better with a smaller dot. The market seems to demand smaller dots. And the manufacturers will do what the market demands. I think that it's a nice way of saying this. I think it's just unbridled imagination of an average consumer who's never looked at this closely. Basically, that pushes the market toward the 3 MOA dot being the most requested and therefore the most popular option. It is simply not true that that is a better way to go. For anything we use the red dots for, we should all be shooting with larger dots. But the market is what it is. If you've ever had a discussion on the internet forum, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Jared, I'm still waiting on hologram technology. Why? Now I'm very curious. Are you implying that you're waiting for the holographic sight to be miniaturized sufficiently for handguns to use on a handgun, or I'm kind of curious about this one. I don't think we'll see a holographic sight in this general size that you can mount on a pistol, anytime soon. Nor would I want one, to be honest. I don't think that would be a good solution at all. So please clarify what exactly you're waiting for. Mr. Beardo, people don't shoot as well as they think they are. That's an understatement of the century. What I found over the years is people who have the strongest opinion and fight for those with the most enthusiasm are the ones who shoot the least. But yeah, maybe I'm just an old cynic. Wouldn't surprise me. Oh, Mr. Beardo, while we're here, did you register for shot? Just curious. All right, Mr. Regis. Okay, thanks for the insight. Concealability and ease of draw from concealment are my other major concerns. So most modern holsters have been adapted for use with red dot sights, but not all. So when you're purchasing one, you definitely should keep an eye on it. If you're planning to carry it concealed, again, I've been experimenting with that a little bit, and for concealed carry, I am beginning to lean more and more toward enclosed optics, simply because they're easier to keep clean. That's pretty much it. When you have a open emitter red dot sight, and it's, if you have hip carry or something like that, it's pointing down, so the curved surface of the lens is like this, and all sorts of crap is going to be collecting. And you can still see through it, but it's annoying. So for that, for example, this newly announced primary arms HTX1 is going to be a significant competitor, and Shield finally started making. I think they announced them. Beardo, I did, but I think I'm waiting. I sent it to you a couple of weeks ago. So please check your email, and I will look at mine. But I'm quite certain it went out. Let me see. Beardo. Yeah, December 18th is when I sent you the email. It's in my sent box. Okay. So December 18th, check your inbox. Where was I? Yeah, RHSC. Shield has the AMS that I haven't tested it. I plan to, but it's looking pretty good. And there are, as I mentioned earlier, for more on a budget, there is Swamp Fox and Gideon Optics, a little bit bigger, a little bit bulkier. But on a gun the size of a Glock 19, I probably wouldn't have any real issues carrying one concealed. So that should work well enough. Mr. Grizzly Bear, I just ordered an 8 MOA Vortex XL. I have watched so many reviews that professional shooters prefer the large dot. I have always ran the smallest I could, thinking it's more precise for the longer shot. Yeah, that is the most common misconception. It is for any distance where you'd be shooting a handgun, smaller dot being more precise is simply not true. So Beardo, I'm gonna resend the email. I'll just I'm in my sent. Hold on. I'm gonna just, so you don't have to look for it, I'm gonna forward it to you again right now. And there we go. I'm forwarding it to you again. So it should be on the top of your mailbox. Okay. What was it? Yeah, so grizzly bear. So the smaller dot being more precise for the longer shot, that's simply not true. That's not how a vision works. And if you think about it, so 8 MOA dot is 8 inches at 100 yards. How well do you shoot your handgun that you think that this would make any sort of a difference? It generally wouldn't, because whatever you're shooting at 100 yards is probably going to be bigger than 8 inches. But still, it is much easier to see. And again, as we get older and our eyes develop some sort of mild astigmatism, a larger dot increasingly has more significant advantages because it simply looks sharper to your eye. Where a small dot may look like a starburst, a larger dot is much more likely to retain its parent shape. Mr. Beardo, good night, sir. There we go. Again, Mr. Grizzly Bear. Now that I shoot more often, I focus more on how many hits versus where I hit. I love shooting steel plates, and I have been working on speed. Bingo. Yes, in your case, the larger dot will definitely work better. For rifle use, depending on how you use a red dot, I can probably make an argument for a smaller dot more easily. And even there, I tend to prefer a somewhat larger dot. But for handgun use, I don't think there should be any sort of an argument. Larger dot is the way to go, and as you correctly pointed out, if you look at what the professionals or the competitive, high-end competitive shooters use, they virtually all lean toward a larger dot. There is a reason for it. They are not doing it just for shits and giggles. Actually, my microphone was pointing some weird direction. So Grizzly, I can't shoot an 8-inch group with a pistol at 100 yards. No, well, neither can I. I've seen people who can do it with relatively specialized guns, but I am not one of them. Not at all. I do practice shooting my handguns at longer distances quite regularly because it is demanding. And we tend to focus on speed a little bit too much when we shoot our handguns. So I try to divide my handgun practice when I get a chance to practice. I try to divide it between trying to go relatively fast and doing double taps and transitions from target to target and all that. And I'm not especially good at it, so I need a lot of practice. But I mix that with slow fire, very deliberate shooting at longer distances. Where I shoot, I don't do 100 too much. I do it occasionally, but 70 yards is relatively common. And I found that to be a very good way to slow down and really focus on the fundamentals, on maintaining a sight picture, etc. Okay. Jared, I don't understand what you're saying. And Jared's saying not holographic sight, EOTech, but holographic. So I'm sorry, I don't understand what you mean. What is not holographic but holographic? I don't know. I don't get it. Like hologram, more advanced technology. Why is hologram more advanced technology in this case? Hologram, like EOTech and the Vortex UH1, which are the only holographic sights we currently have. The most fundamental problem with them is that to generate that hologram requires a laser which is far more demanding of battery power than LED-based sights. And I do not see that being resolved anytime soon. They require significantly more battery power, and also the way the packaging works, they require significantly more space. I have seen nothing to suggest that would be able to miniaturize them well enough anytime soon while running off the battery the size of a 2032. If this technology exists somewhere, I do not know where. I am not aware of it, and I honestly don't see the reason for it. The solution we have with the LED-based dots is very efficient, and I do not anticipate that going away or stopping. It is a dominant technology right now. I don't anticipate that changing anytime soon. Hologram is a more advanced technology, but the big question is that does it offer any sort of an advantage? Just because it's advanced doesn't mean it's advantageous. Did you see that new aimpoint COA announced today? I have not looked through all the announcements. There's all sorts of pre-shot show announcements happening. I have not. I've had a chance to look at all of them. Glock aimpoint COA, is that the one that fits? I don't know what it is. It's just another footprint. I think it's an acro with another footprint, right? A cut mounting solution. Okay. So different cut on the slide. Looks like it should be reasonably secure. But other than that, unless I'm misreading something, it looks very much like a... Yeah, it looks very much like a slightly repurposed aimpoint acro. That's pretty much it. Oh, there you go. I see another picture. Yeah, okay. I'm sure it's going to work. I don't particularly care if it has a different footprint. I am happy to see that it's going to be adapted to shorter, slimmer slides like Glock 43X and Glock 48. That's a nice thing. But beyond that, I don't know. I'll look at it at SHOT Show and see. But again, it's a 3.5 MOA dot and a new cut. And I'm not convinced I hugely care. Right? So I don't know. The way the primary arms HTX is mounted, I think, is very clever. The way they do the bottom plate is a little bit different, and it's essentially part of the rigidity, etc., of the dot itself. And it will work for RMR footprint and go directly into Glock MOS. But with a primary arms HTX, again, I'm not super excited by the fact that the center dot is relatively small. It's a 3 MOA. But again, that's a general misconception that that's what the market wants. And what the market wants, the market gets. Wolford, maybe it's actually reliable. I think it's a dig at the early acros. I gotta say that most of the red dot sights we see on handguns right now are pretty reliable. I don't think we're seeing all that many issues. A lot of what I see as being reported issues is people who watch too many YouTube videos who go out and start hammering nails with these things and just destroy an optic. I think that's, for what I've seen so far, that's largely a made-up problem. But hey, I could be wrong. EOTech, eFlix line of sight. I think I introduced them a couple of years ago. This EFLX, I think, right? I could figure out how to pronounce it. I think it's just EFLX. I thought they were perfectly normal red dot sights. I didn't think there was, excuse me. I didn't think there was anything especially unusual about them. I liked this. I think I've looked briefly at the 6 MOA version at some point. It looked like perfectly reasonable red dot sight. It's an OEM. I'm pretty sure it's just an OEM, the red dot sight, so there's nothing really different about it. It's one of many competent open emitter red dot sights out there, best I can tell. So that's kind of the thing, right? So when I look at which red dot sights I have, there is a good variety of them. I have them from relatively budget brands, so still quite good quality, like Swarm Fox and Gideon. I've got a Burris Fastfire 4. I've got one from ES Optics called, I think, DRS2, which works pretty nicely. I have another budget one from Hawk. Again, I had a couple of those. I haven't had any real issues. I have a fairly old Doctor Sight 3, which still works very, very nicely. That sits on top of my Alcan Spectra 4X. I have a significant number of them from Shield, RMS, RMS2, a couple of RMSCs. On balance, as far as which red dot sight brand I have the most mileage with, it's probably Shield sights from UK. I like the fact that they're made in UK, but ultimately it doesn't matter that much. But I have a lot of them, and they've generally worked well for me. I've broken one through sheer physical abuse, and they took care of it, so that's been good. I have, I think, 2 from primary arms. One from primary arms. I had one holosun, but I gave it recently to my nephew with new handguns since he turned 21. So I don't think I have any pistol-mounted holosuns at the moment. What else do I have? I don't have any aim points at the moment. I've tested them. I don't have the FLX, although I've looked at it. I think there are a couple more that I'm not thinking of right now. But in normal use, when I'm not trying to break them, they all work relatively well. Many of the new ones that have aspherical lens shapes are a little bit better corrected. They're not all created with the same size sweet spot. And the way it works, so one of the big disservices for the industry is that the majority of the manufacturers advertise these as being parallax free, which is not true. They are larger parallax 3 at a certain distance, usually around 50 yards, sometimes 30 yards, but somewhere in there. And there is manufacturing tolerance there as well. And what that means is that for some region around the center of the viewing window, if you move your hand behind it, they are not really going to see an apparent movement of the dot. But with virtually all of them, you will see a little bit of it as you get closer to the edge of the viewing window. At closer distances where you're moving fast, it basically doesn't matter where the dot is if you're shooting at across the room distances for training. If you see the dot, it's on target, pull the trigger, you'll be fine. Maybe a couple inches off somewhere in there. That's less than your dispersion when you're going fast. And if you're shooting at something some distance away where you can slow down, well, then the dot is going to be somewhere in general toward the center. And you're not going to have any parallax-related issues. Again, I think the issue of the parallax in pistol-mounted red dot sights has been greatly overblown, and most of them have pretty respectable sweet spot size. The largest in terms of proportion of the area sweet spot size is probably the Vortex Defender XL. I was quite impressed with how well corrected it was, especially given that it's a relatively compact red dot sights with a nice and large window. I was quite impressed. But again, I've seen in the past some crappy ones where you saw some parallax pick up in the center. You're not supposed to have any. If you do, send it back. But some of the parallax toward the edges of the viewing window does not bother me. Does not bother me in the slightest. With the EOTech FLX, if memory serves me right, again, it was for the money, etc. It was perfectly reasonable, kind of a meat pack-ish red dot sights. The biggest reason over the years that I've used the various shield ones so much, especially for carry optics, is that they have very, very low deck height. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so curious about this new enclosed primary arms one. It also has a very low deck height while being enclosed. So I'm definitely going to get my hands on it and well, beat it up a little bit, see how well it works. I have a meeting scheduled with primary arms during SHOT Show. I think it's on Wednesday, which would be the January 23rd, I want to say. The way I do my SHOT Show coverage, January 22nd. The way I do my SHOT Show coverage is that I'm going to try to get in front of the camera at the end of every day and give you a summary of what I saw that day. So on the 22nd, January 22nd, on Wednesday night, I will have relatively detailed impressions about the new stuff from primary arms. I'm familiar with some of it. I've seen several prototypes over the years, but they should have near production samples at SHOT Show that I can look at. So I'm cautiously optimistic about that. Okay. Mr. Wolford, given large window RDS holos, why is there not a large FOV magnifier? It's actually an interesting question. What would you consider to be a large field of view magnifier? There is no a magnifier is basically a prismatic sight without a reticle. For example, for 3x primary arms magnifier, it's basically the same thing as the 3x micro prismatic sight. If you were to try to make one with a significantly larger field of view, and a good equivalent of that would be something like a large prismatic weapon sight. Notice how much larger and heavier they are. The idea of a magnifier, is to have it on the rifle and not make it too big or too heavy, right? And if you're trying to do that, you either need to have super short eye relief, or you constrict the field of view a little bit, right? And also by constricting the field of view a little bit, you make eye position behind it a little bit more forgiving. That's more or less it. If you are trying to get if you are trying to get 7 degrees with a 4x, you will end up either with a significantly larger optic, or with something like the 4x ACOG, which has a very nice and wide field of view, but it has a very short and fairly critical eye relief. And the way people use magnifiers, I don't think that is a viable way to go. And if you have a more forgiving and longer eye relief, you will end up with a significantly larger and heavier optic. That's probably why. All that having been said, I am personally, given the rise in low power variables and prismatics and all that sort of stuff, I'm shocked to this day that magnifiers still exist. I have several. I use them occasionally in actual use the way I use guns. Unless I'm testing something, there is no real compelling reason to have anything to do with the magnifier that I'm aware of. But then again, I always lean a little bit more toward the precision side of things, so I'm not an unbiased observer, really. Clearly, a lot of guns out there with holographics and red dot sights. Clearly, a lot of magnifiers are sold. It's another thing that I've been looking at. I have a broad range of magnifiers from 3 power to 6 power that I use, and I've been doing a little bit more shooting with them occasionally. And I have to admit that for most relatively conventional use, even with the better, I have a couple of pretty decent 6 power magnifiers. I have the Aimpoint 6X and I have the Vortex Micro 6X. And they're pretty good, but I gotta admit that the way I use magnifier is something compact, as light as possible, with about 3 power or so is plenty. I have a couple of 3 power magnifiers from Vortex and Primary Arms. I have a 4 power from SIG. I have a 6 power from Vortex and Aimpoint. And I have a relatively expensive 5 power magnifier. I don't remember which one. Well, maybe Athlon. And having spent an embarrassingly significant amount of time with them, I have to say that for rifles where I care, I'm more likely to just use a low power variable or a prismatic with an offset red dot sight. I don't think a magnifier, other than for very sporadic use, is really that viable of a solution compared to the other options we have. But again, right, so I lean more toward being able to clearly identify the target and engage it precisely rather than just for sheer speed. So I don't have a ton of rifles that are just with a red dot, right? It's just not the way my shooting leans, and I may be misguided. But I'm a hobbyist, not a professional, so I do what seems to work for me. I will say that quite a few people in the industry are similarly shocked that magnifiers still exist, but hey, they sell. And what the market wants, well, ultimately the market gets. But I'm not necessarily advocating, just curious given their popularity. Okay. Well, as I said, I just don't think the trade-off with size makes sense for magnifiers. So that's probably the biggest. There's no technical reason why we can't necessarily have a larger size magnifier, but to fully utilize it without any shading or vignetting, you'd need a rather large red dot sight. So for a large red dot sight, I don't think there are any that I'm aware of that are large enough other than some old machine gun sights. Because remember, if you're bumping up the magnification to have any sort of a ease of use, you also need to bump up the diameter of the front lens in the magnifier, and the whole thing just starts blowing up. It's gonna be pretty much not super manageable, especially given that now if it's significantly larger and heavy, the flip to the side mount needs to be a lot more robust again. So it all kind of steamrolls from there, and you end up with something that's probably not worth the weight and size compromise. Okay. All right. What else you got, guys? While I'm waiting for more questions, so I was sick for a week, which really cut into my practice time. For an Narelle Hunter match, I'm planning to shoot in. I'm shooting one the weekend before SHOT Show in Arizona at Gunsite, and the next one I plan to shoot is going to be in the beginning of April in Colorado, in I want to say Larkspur, something like that. I'll tell you exactly. I think it's somewhere half hour or so south of Denver. I just signed up for it. Oh, there you go. There's 2025 Narelle Hunter schedule. If you happen to be in Colorado and you're planning to shoot in that match, come say hi. As I've been saying, now that I started I'm starting to shoot. There you go, April 4th through 6th, a Battle of Rattlesnake Butte. I'm gonna share my screen so you guys can see. So I'm gonna shoot in one Gunsite in a couple of weeks, and then this one in the beginning of April. For my work, I have a space-related show in Colorado, so I need to head out there anyway. So the weekend before, I am going to go and just drive to Colorado and shoot this one. It looks like an interesting match. Now that I'm shooting in all hunter competitions, the race for the last place has intensified. So whoever thinks that they might be taking a last place in this one, I'm going to fight you for it. But it should be a blast, and after doing a few of these, I'm confident I'll become a better shooter. It's definitely forcing me to have more focused practice, which I'm pretty happy with. Debo, do you think? Oh, that's a good question. Do you think red dots are a revolutionary enough technology on the handgun platform to delve into a previously owned handgun collection to get all the slides milled and refinished for an optic? All probably not. For fun, I enjoy shooting quite a few different guns. Several of them are iron sight only, and quite a few of the older guns. I don't know which kind of guns you have. Quite a few of the older guns are also not very adaptable to red dot sights at all. But for anything that I might use for home defense or carry, anything like that, for me personally, red dot sights provide a radical enough advantage that anything I use for those purposes, other than like a tiny pocket pistol, and I have one of those too, will have a red dot sight on it. Would I, mutilate everything I have? Probably not. Definitely not anything collectible and stuff like that. But for guns I'm willing to use for self defense, yeah, I want red dots on it. I know I'm 48. When I was in my 20s, maybe it wouldn't have made this much of a difference. It does now. And that's it. Okay, I have 1911s and Glocks with no optic footprint mostly. Look, I would get one of your Glocks, cut it for an optic, and go practice with it. And relatively quickly, you will be able to form your own opinion whether it makes enough of a difference or not. For me, it clearly does. It's not even a question. But I also know of people who advocate against it. I think they're wrong, and I don't think they gave it, justice in terms of trying to get used to it. But hey, everyone is different. I'm operating under an assumption for the vast majority of the people out there that is the way to go, unless your astigmatism is so severe that it renders red dots completely unusable. That is not super common. I have mild astigmatism, so this dots, especially the smaller dots, are not perfectly round to me. It does not really preclude me from using them quite effectively at normal handgun distances. I do have one 1911 that's cut for red dot sight. I had some issues with, so it's a project gun. I need to reset everything up. But on my 911 also got milled, even though I'm not going to use it for anything defensive, but it's a nice gun to shoot. So, and again, since that is what I use on my defensive handguns, I prefer to do the bulk of my practice with red dot sight equipped firearms, pistols, as it were. Just to give you an idea. Okay, here's one of the pictures. The guys on my local site have seen it. I'm gonna share it with you. There we go. So here's kind of a representative picture of three very differently sized red dot sights. There we go. So in the center is a very modified Glock 17. Well, it started as Glock 31. That was my original frame. I had the grip at some point chopped, so I can have Glock 19 magazines, and the finger grooves removed. This was one of the guns I used to test the Defender XL, and I also had it on the Glock 19M. On the right is a Gen 5 Glock with the Shield RMS2. That is probably the gun I'm going to take to the, very likely, to the Burris Optics Challenge competition in June. And largely because if you look at it, it's not a Glock trigger. This is a Timney Glock trigger for Gen 5. And in terms of the trigger quality, it has very good braking. It's a very easy gun to shoot accurately, and at that competition, that's what matters. On the left was a Glock 34 that I used for testing Leupold Delta Point Micro. But I will sort of freely admit that generally Delta Point Micro is probably a better fit for the slimmer frame guns. But even on the 34, that again I like to use to shoot a little bit further out, it was extremely helpful, especially in fading light. Mr. Woolford, I don't care for red dots and carry guns. If I'm adding height, I'll go for full-size grip. My first red dot will stay, once again. Whatever rocks your boat. Also, you're young and you have younger eyes. It is entirely possible that as you go along, your preferences will change somewhat. The important thing is, keep practicing and be honest with yourself, and occasionally reevaluate these kinds of decisions, because as you get older, as you practice differently, etc., your preferences might shift and adjust as you go along. So, for me, basically, my standard carry gun is a Glock 48 or 43X with a red dot sight and a Shield Arms 15-round magazine, and the Streamlight TLR6 sub light on it. That's pretty much it. So I have not found adding any of those things to be in any way detrimental to carrying the gun. Wolford, that's a fair point. No, exactly. It's actually an interesting point. And now that I think about it, we tend to form some very strong opinions, and we tend to forget to reevaluate them as I go along. I do this exercise once a year, so it's actually about time, and I should probably do one what I call if I could have only one. And one of the reasons I do it is that I set up different scenarios. What if I could have only one gun, only one optic, only one whatever, fill in the blank. But one of the once a year, usually I write a couple articles on the subject. Sometimes it's the same thing as it was last year. Sometimes it's something a little bit different. But one of the reasons I do it is to force myself to kind of take a step back and reevaluate how I think about certain weapon systems, optics, accessories, etc. Once a year, I sit and think, okay, if I was forced to only have one rifle, one pistol, one shotgun, for example, right? What would I pick? Is it something that's different from what I would have picked 12 months ago, 24 months ago, 36, etc.? Sometimes it's something different. Sometimes it's the same thing as last year. Both are okay. The point of the exercise is for me to take a step back, think about it honestly, and reevaluate. Now, if I was a true, YouTuber, it would have been something different every time, just so that I could put in more affiliate links. But that's just not how I think about this stuff, right? I try to make as sober and honest of an evaluation as I can master, and go from there. All right, gentlemen, it's been about an hour. I am kind of slowly fading. It's been a long couple of days. And I need to get up around 5:30 in the morning. Tomorrow, I have an 8 a.m. flight from Dallas to Denver. I'm gonna spend the day in Denver to go watch a Douglas Murray show. If you don't know who Douglas Murray is, he's a British American writer, journalist, and commentator who's been very good on all sorts of Middle Eastern stuff, and I'm very curious to see what he's going to say about what's going on in Britain. So he's got a show tomorrow night in Denver, and my family is flying in. I'm going to meet them there, and then on Thursday we're going to drive back from Denver to Albuquerque. So I need to be at the Dallas airport at 8 a.m. tomorrow, which I don't know if I'm necessarily looking forward to. I'm not a morning person, but I'm looking forward to spending a nice evening on the town with my family, and we'll have some friends coming as well. If you don't know who Douglas Murray is, he's got a ton of interesting videos on YouTube and debates. I highly recommend it. If you're interested in some of this political stuff, it's worth looking into. He definitely has the gift of the word. A very, very clear communicator, which I have a ton of appreciation for. But anyhow, with all that, I'm going to stick around for a couple more minutes. If there's anything else you guys want me to address, now's the time. As far as pistol mounted red dot sights, just to summarize, in terms of speed, I think there is a measurable advantage to large window red dot sights on full size or similar guns. On thinner, slimmer guns, I'm not so sure there is a significant difference. For carry guns, I am strongly in favor of using optics, and both on carry and competition handguns. I'm not much of a competition shooter. I have, again, a similarly relatively strong preference toward larger dot sizes, 6 MOA and up. And whether red dot sights are for you, as is always the case, don't just listen to me. I will argue my point, but I also test my point. Your test results may be different. It is usually worthwhile for you, if you don't have any handguns with slide mounted optics. If you have the opportunity to do so, acquire one or cut one of the ones you have, practice, see if this approach works as well for you as it does for me. It is worthwhile to go and seek information, well, from people like me sometimes, and there's quite a few of us talking about this stuff. There's no replacement to actually trying it and putting in some time and effort into practicing, figure out what works for you. Okay. don't just, all the different influencers, they love going, oh yeah, buy this one, it's the best one ever. That usually just means they get the most commissions on it. I don't think I did this, and I add my affiliate links, and when you guys buy something using my links, I do appreciate it. But I'm not here to make you buy a specific optic. I'm here to explain my reasoning, and hopefully it might help you make a better decision, whatever the decision may end up being. All right, Snod, have safe travels. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Mr. Beardo, have a good night. You too, sir. I hope you guys all have a good night and enjoy the winter season. I think there's a winter storm coming to Dallas. It's coming on Thursday, so I'm bailing out on Wednesday. It's a good thing. It looks like there's going to be quite a lot of snow being dumped all over the place. And if you are in the path of the storm, well, stay warm, stay indoors, or go outside and throw snowballs. That's fun too. Thank you all, and have a good night.